In September 2019, Donald Trump said something that made the world laugh. He wanted to buy Greenland. The headlines were brutal. Late-night comedians made jokes for weeks. The Danish Prime Minister called it absurd. The media dismissed it as another Trump eccentricity. Everyone moved on, but something strange happened after that moment. Within months, China announced a major investment in Arctic infrastructure. Russia began militarizing the Arctic aggressively, establishing new military bases and expanding its naval presence. The U.S. suddenly allocated massive budgets to Arctic defense and established new military installations in Greenland. Denmark, which had barely thought about Greenland strategically in decades, began panicking about its sovereignty. Nobody was laughing anymore. What looked absurd in 2019 revealed something that nobody wanted to admit. Greenland wasn't valuable because of its ice. It was valuable because of what the ice was hiding and what melting ice reveals. Trump's ridiculous proposal was actually a signal. And superpowers understood the signal immediately. In 2024, a person living in Greenland experiences something unprecedented in their nation's history. The world suddenly cares about their home. Not because Greenlanders asked for attention, because superpowers calculated that Greenland holds something that will reshape global power for the next century. The ice is melting. Beneath it are resources worth trillions. Above it are shipping routes that cut journey times by 40%. And suddenly every major superpower is positioning itself to control what's underneath. This wasn't random. It wasn't accident. It was inevitable. And by the time most people understood what was happening, the competition was already decided. But to understand why Greenland matters now, you need to understand what changed in the Arctic. For 500 years, the Arctic was useless. Frozen solid, uninhabitable, impassable, it locked away resources and blocked shipping routes. Explorers died trying to traverse it. Nations ignored it. Greenland was a footnote in global geography, a place people went to die, not to profit. Then the temperature rose. And everything changed. The ice that locked away resources for millennia began melting. The melting accelerated. By 2010, the pace became undeniable. Shipping routes that required circumnavigating Africa or navigating the Panama Canal suddenly became possible through the Arctic. A ship traveling from Shanghai to Rotterdam that normally took 48 days could now take 28 days through the Northwest Passage. That's 40% faster. In global commerce, time is money. 40% faster is billions in savings repeated annually, but shipping routes were only the beginning. As ice retreated, resources became visible. Rare earth minerals that were inaccessible under frozen ground became exploitable. Oil reserves that were locked beneath ice became reachable. The USGS estimated 17.5 billion barrels of oil equivalent in Arctic reserves. Rare earth deposits that could supply the world for decades. This isn't a climate change discussion. This is strategic revelation. The mathematics of geopolitics changed in real time. Timeline, 2000. The Arctic is stable, frozen, irrelevant. 2010, ice melting accelerates, superpowers begin paying attention. 2020, Arctic becomes genuinely accessible, competition intensifies. 2024, superpowers are mobilizing openly. The math is simple and brutal. Whoever controls Arctic resources controls the supply of rare earths, oil, and minerals that power modern civilization. Whoever controls Arctic shipping routes controls the fastest pathways for global commerce. Whoever controls both controls leverage over every nation dependent on resources or trade. For 500 years, Greenland was worthless. In the last 5 years, it became the most strategically important piece of real estate on Earth. The ice is melting faster than anyone publicly admits. The window for claiming resources is closing. So what exactly is under that melting ice that has superpowers so interested? Greenland sits on the world's largest undeveloped rare earth mineral deposits. Not theoretical, documented, USGS reports confirm it. Rare earths aren't romantic. They're foundational to every modern technology. Your smartphone contains rare earths. Every electric vehicle battery requires them. Military weapon systems depend on them. Solar panels and wind turbines need them. Renewable energy infrastructure, the technology humanity needs to transition away from fossil fuels, cannot be built without rare earths. China currently controls 90% of global rare earth mining. This isn't competition. This is monopoly. China extracts rare earths, refines them, manufactures components, and controls supply to the world. Every nation dependent on modern technology is dependent on Chinese supply chains. Greenland's deposits could break that monopoly. Not immediately, but within a decade, Greenland could supply the world with rare earths independent of Chinese control. That shifts global leverage fundamentally, but rare earths are only part of the equation. Greenland contains massive oil and gas reserves. Estimates from USGS suggest 17.5 billion barrels of oil equivalent beneath melting ice. In a world where energy independence is national security, this matters. Countries that control Arctic oil control leverage over OPEC. Control over OPEC means leverage over oil prices. Control over oil prices means influence over every nation that depends on imported energy. Russia, historically, has used energy as a weapon. Whoever controls Arctic oil can do the same. Then there's geographic control. Greenland sits between North America and Europe. Control Greenland's airspace and you control the Arctic Passage. Control the Arctic Passage and you control the fastest shipping routes between Asia and North America. Control global shipping routes and you control the pace of global commerce. The geopolitical math is clear. China needs rare earths to maintain supply monopoly. The U.S. needs to break that monopoly. Russia wants to militarize Arctic to control passage. Europe wants energy independence to break Russian leverage. Everyone is moving on Greenland simultaneously because Greenland is where all these competitions converge. Greenland was seen as desolate wasteland. It's actually a resource goldmine and geographic choke point. By the time most people understand what Greenland contains, the strategic position will already be decided by superpowers. Understanding what's at stake helps explain the moves superpowers are already making. Trump's 2019 offer to buy Greenland wasn't a joke. It was signaling intent to the world. The U.S. then increased military presence in Greenland, established new strategic partnerships with Denmark, allocated massive Arctic defense budgets, and positioned itself as Greenland's security guarantor. The Biden administration continued this Arctic strategy without interruption. It's bipartisan. Both parties understand Arctic dominance matters. The U.S. is betting on alliance with Denmark, treaty access, military presence. But the public-facing strategy hides the real game. Deeper moves are happening simultaneously. The U.S. is funding Greenland's independence movement quietly. Economic investment is flowing into Greenland infrastructure. Strategic positioning is casting America as the Western option, the stable, democratic choice compared to authoritarian alternatives. China's approach is different. China invested billions in Arctic infrastructure, funded Greenland development projects, positioned itself as economic partner to Denmark, acquired mining rights exploration agreements. China is betting on economic integration. Make Greenland economically dependent on China first. Once that dependence exists, leverage it for resource access and Arctic Passage cooperation. More subtle than the U.S. approach. More financially aggressive, China already controls rare earth supply globally. Now it's securing future sources. It's playing the long game. Russia can't compete on resources or economic influence. Russia is betting on military control of Arctic waters instead. Nuclear icebreakers, military bases, Arctic fleet expansion. If Russia controls Arctic waters militarily, it has leverage over any Arctic Passage exploitation regardless of who controls Greenland resources. Military dominance as compensation for economic weakness. Denmark is caught between superpowers. It technically owns Greenland, but Denmark is realizing Greenland is becoming too strategically important to hold. Greenland's independence movement is accelerating. Denmark is increasingly seen as administrator of a global resource, not sovereign power. The timeline reveals the pattern. 2015 to 2019, positioning begins quietly. 2019 to 2021, Acceleration intensifies after Trump's signal. 2022 to 2024, militarization and competition intensifies openly. U.S. military announcements. China's mining agreement attempts. Russia's Arctic fleet expansion. All public information. All revealing the same pattern. Every superpower made its opening move. Every superpower understood the stakes. Every superpower is now mobilizing. The public sees Greenland as remote Arctic island. Superpowers see it as the prize that determines 21st century dominance. Every move a superpower makes in the Arctic now is a move toward control that becomes permanent. This raises a question most people never consider. What happens to Greenland's population in this competition? Greenland's population is 56,000, tiny, yet the world's superpowers are competing to control their territory and resources. Greenlanders are experiencing something unprecedented in their history. Their small nation suddenly matters geopolitically. Not because they asked for it, because superpowers calculated that controlling Greenland determines their position in the next century. Greenland's independence movement is accelerating. Greenlanders want sovereignty. They've wanted it for decades. But independence requires economic viability, and their current economy is small. Superpowers sense opportunity. The U.S. hints at investment if Greenland stays Western-aligned. China offers development funding if Greenland opens to Chinese investment. Russia suggests security partnerships. Greenlanders are being courted by superpowers offering to fund their independence if they choose the right side. The trap is structural. Greenland needs resources to be independent. Resources require foreign investment and technical expertise. Whoever provides that investment gets leverage. Greenland becomes independent on paper but dependent in practice. History shows this pattern. Countries that became independent during the Cold War discovered independence meant choosing between Soviet and U.S. alignment. The same trap is emerging with Greenland. Independence is possible. True independence is not. Greenland's government understands this. Their statements reveal careful realism. They want sovereignty, but they understand the geopolitical reality. Local government is being careful in diplomatic positioning, trying to maintain relationships with all superpowers while securing maximum benefit. They're playing the only game available, extract concessions from competing powers, while delaying alignment as long as possible, but delay only works for so long. Superpowers are patient but not indefinitely. Offers come with timelines. Greenland must choose. Sooner or later, every nation caught between superpowers must pick a side. Greenlanders are experiencing a historical moment where their nation matters globally. But that mattering comes with strings. Within 10 years, Greenland's strategic alignment will be decided. Once decided, it's difficult to change. This competition for Greenland is part of a larger Arctic strategy that has implications for everyone. Greenland isn't unique. It's symbolic of larger Arctic competition. Whoever dominates Arctic resources, Arctic passage, and Arctic territory will have enormous leverage in the 21st century. This isn't speculation. This is structural reality. Energy independence will matter more as fossil fuel transitions occur. The world is moving toward renewable energy. That transition requires rare earths. Whoever controls rare earth supply controls the pace and direction of that transition. China currently controls it. Greenland could shift that control. Whoever controls rare earth supply in 2050 controls the speed of global decarbonization. Shipping determines commerce. 90% of global goods move by ship. Traditional routes take weeks longer than Arctic passage. Whoever controls Arctic passage controls the arteries of global commerce. They set shipping costs. They determine delivery times. They influence supply chains that touch every economy. The strategic math is clear and brutal. Rare earth monopoly shifts from China to diversified sources if Greenland develops. Energy leverage shifts from OPEC to Arctic if Arctic develops. Shipping leverage shifts from traditional routes to Arctic if passage opens. Military leverage shifts to whoever militarizes Arctic first. Russia is already doing this. These four shifts determine which countries are powerful in 2050 Greenland is where all these shifts converge. 3. Scenarios emerge from current moves. Scenario 1, U.S. and Western alignment wins Greenland. Western nations achieve resource independence. Chinese supply monopoly breaks. Global power shifts westward. Scenario 2, Chinese economic integration wins. China secures rare earth supply for a century. China gains Arctic Passage influence. Global power shifts eastward. Scenario 3, Greenland plays superpowers against each other. Maintains independence on paper. Becomes dependent on all simultaneously. Global power fragments into competing spheres. Most people see Greenland as isolated Arctic territory. Strategists see it as the pivot point for global power in the next 100 years. The Arctic is being claimed in real time. In 20 years, the competition will be over. The question is, who wins? Understanding this pattern reveals something uncomfortable about how global power actually works. History shows a consistent pattern. When superpowers identify strategic territory, they move to control it. Sometimes through military force, sometimes through economic integration, sometimes through alliance. Greenland is experiencing this pattern in real time. Right now, the public narrative focuses on climate change and ice melting. That's technically true, but the strategic narrative is resource control and geopolitical dominance. Both are happening simultaneously. The public sees one story. Superpowers are executing another. What makes this important isn't Greenland specifically. It's the pattern it reveals. Superpowers are in active competition for strategic positioning in the Arctic. This competition will determine energy leverage, resource supply, shipping routes, and military dominance for the next century. These aren't abstract concepts. They're the foundations of national power. The people in Greenland are the least powerful actors in this competition. Yet their territory is what's being fought over. That's the fundamental pattern of geopolitics. The location matters more than the people. Geography determines power. More than population or intention. Greenland's S transformation from worthless to priceless in 5 years was an accident. It was inevitable. Once the ice started melting, superpowers calculated what that meant. The math was simple. Control Greenland, control the Arctic. Control the Arctic, control the next century. Watch the Arctic. Whoever controls it in 2030 will have leverage for the next 70 years. The competition is already happening. Most people don't see it because it's not dramatic. It's methodical. It's strategic. It's already decided. Subscribe to see the patterns of power before they reshape your world.